I'd just like to welcome everybody here at the bridge, my family, my friends. Y'all my friends. But you know, as I look out there at the bridge tonight, I see a special friend tonight. I see a special friend that back in 1986, me and this brother was locked up in jail together back in a little town called Groesbeck, Texas. And it was my first time meeting this brother. We were in jail together, and we discovered that we had a lot in common. He was a football star at Baylor, and I was a football star at SMU. And so we became real good friends. And we both got in trouble, in and out. We get out of jail, and I don't know about him, but I kept going back and forth. And in fact, I made 3 trips back to Groesbeck, Texas. But I'm going to tell you something, though. Each time that I went, I was facing a chance of going to the penitentiary. And I was listening to Brother Ronnie saying, I heard somebody say earlier, where would I be without his grace? I know where I would be without his grace. God spared me 3 times from going to the penitentiary. And I'm thankful for that. So I'm glad to see you, Brother Bailey. That's James Bailey. And me and him became real good friends. And you know what? It's funny. It's funny how God will bring you back together. You know, and he'll tell you, even back then in those days in 86 when we were in jail locked up, I was preaching in jail. I was preaching then. Trying to do the will of God, trying to make up for all those stupid things that I had done. And I believe it's because of that God has spared me. I want to talk tonight about, do you know who you are? Do you know who you are? You know, ever since it was a day when Satan was in heaven and he got beside himself, he tried to exalt himself above God. And the very day that he tried to get beside himself and exalt himself above God, God kicked him out of heaven. And notice, if you read real carefully in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, when God was creating the world and the land and the sea and everything, Satan was here when God created the world. And so Satan was down here on earth. I want y'all to listen to me. And he was already mad because he got kicked out of heaven. Can you imagine being God's right-hand man or second right-hand man, and all of a sudden you lose that, and you get kicked out, and you down here? And he was mad, but he didn't have nobody to take it out on because he was here all by himself. And so while he was here, he began to look, and he saw God putting and forming together earth, and he saw God forming water and seas and rivers, and he saw God creating trees and stuff. And then one day he looked and he saw God go down on the ground and form a man. Come on. Let's look at it real quick. Go to Genesis 2 and 7. And I imagine when he saw God take some dust and some clay, he probably was saying, what is God doing now? There's something up with him. And we're going to pick it up. We're going to read just one verse, because I want to let you know, if you don't know who you are, you're going to know it right now. He said in verse 7, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So that tells me right there, God breathed into man's nostrils the breath of life. That tells me that the very presence and existence of God is in us. And so when Satan was looking, he was like, what is God? What is he doing now? And he saw this man being formed. And he saw this man being formed from the dust of the ground. And he saw God breathe into his nostrils the breath of life. And he saw this man get up and walk and become a living being. And you know what Satan probably said? You know, I got kicked out of heaven. I got kicked out of the presence of God. But now every time I look at this man, I still see God. Down here. Right down here. I lost authority up there. And then he also realized that as God was forming this man, he told that man, I have given you power and dominion over everything. And Satan was like, wait a minute. I lost up there. Now means I'll destroy him. Have you ever wondered why every time you go to do good, evil is always present? The good you know to do, that ain't what you do. And it's all because of that little trickster named Satan. And he messed up man. He messed up the plan of God for us to live forever. And he was probably walking around bragging and boasting, I got him now. Well, let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. What he didn't know is that God had already devised the plan from the very beginning. God called the end from the beginning. So he already knew that man was going to fall short. He knew Satan was going to defeat man, but he already had a plan in motion. His name is Jesus. He already knew this. So man had to go through life. We have to go through life with this struggle of sin. But do you know who you are? You got the very presence of God in you. And so it reminds me of Israel, the children of Israel. When they were down in Egypt as slaves for 430 years, being mistreated. They worked them from sun up to sundown. They made them build bricks without straw. That's like building a building without cement. The Egyptians made the children of Israel build them cities. And they afflicted them. And I can imagine that they went to work every day tired. Their self-esteem was just destroyed. They probably felt like, I'm a nobody. But they had to work. And so I can imagine while they were working, they were thinking about, man, we just no good with nobody. But then God did something one day. He looked and saw his people being afflicted. And he delivered them by the hand of Moses. Don't you know God have a deliverer for you? Don't you know that whatever you need, God is ready to deliver you? God has seen the stuff, the afflictions that you have gone through. And he's ready to deliver right now. So when he delivered them, he delivered this people. And he brought them into the wilderness where he wanted to talk to them. He has made these people his people now. They have now become his sons and daughters. And I want you to go and look at Exodus 19. Because I'm pretty sure they didn't understand what God was really doing. And I'm pretty sure sometimes you don't understand what God is doing. But I'm going to show you something that God said about these nobodies who thought they were nobodies. See, sometimes man can afflict you and you go through so much.
Come on now.
Man will make you feel low.
But, yeah, come on.
But God.
But, yeah.
But God.
Yeah.
Say it different.